All right, Love is Blind season 4 is here. And guys, I just watched episodes 1 through 3. And my oh my, do I have thoughts. I can't wait to get into this recap today, guys. Because I have to say, the trailer for this season really stumped me. Because all of the couples that I thought were going to end up together, in fact, did not end up together. It really threw me by surprise. And I will say that so far, I also think that I really like the group of men that we have this season. I don't see any Bartistes or Coles, at least not yet. I sometimes with these shows you just don't really know in the first couple of episodes, but at least episodes 1 through 3, I didn't find it being like I didn't. I saw some good potential for some good men, and I'm excited for it. Also, a lot of people of color. I'm excited for that as well. But guys, let's get straight into this episode recap. We're gonna start off with episodes 1. Like I said, I'm gonna do episodes 1 through 3. And I will say these first 3 episodes are usually for Love is Blind are always kind of hard just because it's not that it's boring, but it's just a lot of kind of like the same thing. Everyone talks in these like crazy platitudes like, oh my god, this is the person for me. Like, they're the best, they're perfect, all this stuff. And then the real drama happens once we get to like Mexico and, when they're meeting the families and all that stuff. That's when the real stuff happens. So the first 3 episodes always kind of feel a little bit like, okay, yeah, everything seems perfect. And it's just a whole bunch of just like random people talking about just stuff that I don't really necessarily want to recap. So I'm going to try to get through this as much as possible, as easily as possible. So bear with me. So episode 1 starts off, of course, with a sneak peek of the season's drama, which sure looks like it's going to be lots going on. Someone's going to repropose. At this point, I was like, I don't know. I mean, at this point, it hasn't started, but I'm like, I really have no idea who. I'm trying to think like the voice I heard. I don't know, but it does seem like this season's gonna have some drama. And of course, I am always here for the drama and to talk about it with you guys because it's always just so much fun. But of course, we have Nick and Vanessa. They go into both headquarters for the women and the men. They do what they always do. They introduce themselves. I'm Nick, I'm Vanessa, etc. And then just talk about, obviously, what this experiment is, how it'll work, and they're off, and then you don't see them again. But we start off with meeting Chelsea, and this is always going to be a good one for me because I literally had to write it in a certain way for me to remember how to pronounce it. Kwame. There we go. Kwame. So we meet Chelsea and Kwame first, and so far, they're having a conversation. I really like him. He seems energetic, fun, really, just starts really cool. Chelsea, older woman, knows what she wants. She seems cool too. But we have him also meet with this other girl named Micah. And, so far I liked Kwame. He's, like I said, energetic, fun. He connects with Micah right away. They have like this instant connection. And I do remember while watching this that I was like, oh, we saw her in the trailer a lot. So she's probably like a main character. And also at this point, I also thought that they were going to end up together, but we'll get into that. But next then we also meet up with Paul. And Paul, he's super cute. He's got like this like curly brown hair. I think he's adorable. But he's an environmental scientist. I don't know what they do, but seems interesting. And he meets with this girl named Amber, who's a flight attendant. And we find out she's been married twice, which, damn, like how old are, like that sucks. But at this point, obviously, she must know what she wants in life. But she clearly really likes Paul. So obviously then we just go into this montage of all these dates just going wrong. People asking ridiculous questions. People asking weird questions. Like this one guy who was like, I wear a leopard all the time. And just asking interesting, like, are you short? How short are you? 5'2"? Like just kind of weird. And there's this one guy who's like, yeah, I used to be a stripper, who we eventually find out who that person is. And boy, is he a focal point. But yeah, so just a montage of that. And then we go into meeting Tiffany, who's one of the older women on the show. She's 36, which I said, good. I'm liking the age diversity. I have noticed that also a lot of the people who do get together are a little bit on the older side, or just everyone feels very mature, which I like. No Bartistes up in here. At least not yet. They haven't revealed themselves if they are here. But Tiffany, also is one of the big people from the trailer that you saw. She was in that trailer like a million times. So I'm like, okay, she must be a big focal point. But she meets this guy named Brett, who's 35, so that's good, similar in age. They're very similar energy, like okay, like I'm like, okay, I feel this pairing. I do. Um, and like I don't know, I really liked their energies together, and as it progresses, I do feel like okay, I see that this could work. I do see that. I don't know. Let me know in a comment below if you think Tiffany and Brett are gonna make it because I think they just might. Then we have Arena and Zach, and here begins my Arena rant because throughout the three episodes, I just don't really like her. I'm sorry. I hope she's a better person in real life, and she's just being framed as not being the best person. But throughout these three episodes, I just felt like I just was not a fan of her. She was very the nicest person. Was always kind of laughing. Really gives me like really kind of immature vibes, and that I wasn't about it. I really wasn't. But she meets Zach, and Zach is actually one of the guys who kept saying that he was like a stripper to the women. Like I think it was supposed to be like a joke. Like he's not a stripper. He's actually a criminal defense lawyer. So wows, big names there. But he goes into this conversation with Arena, being like, I was doing that as a joke, but then I realized like, hey, look, I've got 10 days to meet someone that could be my wife. So I figured that the best way to do that is to actually just put the jokes aside and just be vulnerable, which I really liked. And he goes on to talk about his mom and how his mom was the one that was a stripper, and that he grew up in with a mom who was a stripper, and they didn't have a lot of money, and that's how she paid to keep them alive, and they moved around a lot. And then he also really goes into talking about how a lot of families of women that he has dated in the past have really judged him for having that type of past, which is actually just really sad, because just because you were raised a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that you're like a horrible person, or that like what your parents did shouldn't reflect on you. It's a little sad, but yeah. So I genuinely enjoyed, I don't know if that's the right word, but I liked his vulnerability. And I did notice that a lot across the board. I did notice a lot of vulnerability with a lot of the men. I think more so than the women, which was different. And I liked that. I liked that a lot. Then we move on into meeting Bliss, and Bliss is also into Zach, and they are also connecting. And this is basically when you start to see the battle of like the different couples, like the different people who are liking the same people, and how are they going to choose? Like they like two women or they like two men, like who do they go for? That kind of thing. So we definitely start to see that battle specifically with the Zach start between it being Arena or it being Bliss. But Bliss and Zach are talking, and they basically know this song. I don't know what the song is, but it's like this one. It's like an old song, and it's very special to both of their mothers. And Zach starts singing it, and they just have like this really nice, special like bonding moment. Yeah, I brought my notebook, guys. When I gotta recap, I gotta have this. I gotta have my notebook because a lot of stuff goes down. You know what I mean? But then we move on. We have Micah, and she is out now also having an issue because she likes Paul and Kwame. And I was like, oh man. Okay, well, this isn't it really an issue. And Micah goes on to talk about, she feels very validated and safe when she's with Kwame, but she's just not really sure yet. And like I said before, I do really love Paul's hair. The curly hair really does it for me. Just saying, he's a cutie. We move on, or we go back to Brett and Tiffany, who are continuing to connect, and she just feels like she again, like I had mentioned in the beginning of this video, a lot of people speak in these big platitudes about how it's like the best and all this stuff, because it's you're in a little bubble, literally. But she just says that she feels like she could be herself around Brett. And I don't know, I really like their energy. I really, really do. The more they're in the rooms together, I really feel the energy. But episode 1, man, it was freaking hilarious. Well, don't you worry. We're going to cover it soon, friends. Don't you worry. But we move on to Paul and Micah now. And she straight up asks him about Amber, who's the other girl that he might be interested in. And I was like, wow, okay, so she just wants to know, like, do I have a chance here or do I not? And he pretty much just tells her that he is like, he likes her, but he's very much attracted to Micah. And Micah's another one on these couple of episodes that I wasn't a huge fan of either. Just saying. Then we move back to Chelsea, who we met in the beginning of the episode, who's really into Kwame. And, she talks about how she really wants a spiritual connection with the person she ends up marrying. And he's just like, wow, oh my God, like you spoke to my soul. And they have a really good, I think that they at this point have a really good connection as well, because they are very, he wants to be with someone who he feels really is his soul mate, like he wants to not just have sex with someone, he wants to make love with them. Like there's just it's like a soul connecting thing, and I think they both see eye to eye on that, which is really good. But you can really tell that she is really, really into him, like much more, I think, at this point than he is into her. And that always, to me, is always kind of like a little bit of like dangerous waters, because when you have someone who's more into the other person, it can kind of like blow up in your face at some point. So I don't know, dangerous waters, like I say. But then we move on to Kwame meets Mika now, Micah. Micah. Oh my God, this is gonna be a fun one. Micah, and he's pretty much honest, and he tells her that he has this connection with another girl who we know is Chelsea, and he's just straight up with her. He asks her, listen, this girl tells me straight up that she's really into me. And I feel like that's kind of lacking with you. Basically, like, you're not reassuring me. This other girl reassures me every time she's in here that I'm, like, the one. That she really thinks that I could be the one. And I haven't heard that from you, and I need to hear that from you to see how we're going to move forward. And, I had no problem with the way he asked her that. I think it was right. He was sincere. He was open. He's being vulnerable. He's like, hey, I really like you, and I just need to understand, like, do you like me? Because if you don't, I'm gonna move on. And like, we have 10 days. Like, I understand. Like, I get where he was coming from. But then she pretty much tells him, she's like, yeah, I see a future with you, like 100%. And then, guys, he pretty much says that he wants to propose to her early. Guys, it's been like 6 days. Not even a week. And he's like, what would you say if I proposed early? And I was like, oh, shoot. Are they going to be the first engaged? Incorrect. I was incorrect. She's basically like, I think, we should take more of our time. But she does tell him that is falling for him. This stupid word. Like, I hate when they say falling, because it's not a thing. It does not happen in real life. No one ever says I'm falling for you. Only The Bachelor. But Chelsea, she goes back to the workroom. I've been watching too much RuPaul's Drag Race. She goes back to the women's headquarters, and she pretty much talks to the girls when she gets in there. And at this point, she has become like really, really close with Irina, and she just talks to her, and she's just like, oh my God, he like asked me if he could propose early, and I just want to make sure that I'm not rushing this, And I understand that. Like, you want to make sure that this is the correct connection for you, and that you're just not, like, blinded by the fact that some guy's just like, yeah, I want to marry you, So, like, I get that. And I think it is the correct choice for her or for both of them to really kind of take their time and really take most of the time that they can to really get to know the other people in the pods. So, we finally move on to this Marshall guy. And Marshall was in the trailer, like, a lot. I remember, and I was like, oh, okay, he's a focal point. Like, he must be like a focal point. And guys, at this point in the episode, like, he had hardly any screen time. I was like, why is he so prominently in this trailer? Like, I don't know anything about him. Like, who is he even into? Like, he has not been shown at all. So I was very confused as to why we hadn't seen him. I was like, okay, like, you kind of see bits and pieces of him there, but he's not the focal point at this point. Like, Kwame and Micah are more of a focal point, and Paul, than he is. So it was very interesting. But we move on to Tiffany and Brett, and they are, again, definitely, at this point, I was like, all right, they're definitely getting engaged first. Like, they're definitely the ones, like, it's the one. And Brett has this really beautiful, vulnerable moment where he talks about his brother who passed away in a car accident while he was engaged and was going to get married to this woman. Like, where before, like, the accident happened, they had all gone out to get their tuxedos done and everything, and then his brother passed. And since then, he just has a fear of losing someone in that way, What if he walks out of here with her and then something bad like that happens? He just has this fear, and that's sad. It's sad. But Tiffany is at this point fully invested in him, and she tells him that. She's like, I'm fully invested in you. I'm fully invested in you, and I want to be with you. And like I said, I can't ask any more from this couple at this point. They've been very vulnerable with each other. I see the connection. I see the energy they have. I can see that Brett really is into her and nobody else, and vice versa. So at this point, I was like, all right, can we skip to the engagement? Let's get there, But then we go into Amber and Paul, and I was like, oh, could this be an engagement? Could this be an engagement? But no. Nope, it's not. It's just more of them talking. I was like, oh my God. It sucks. It was like, this is only episode 1, and I'm like, all right, is anyone getting engaged? Because, like, I'm ready. Like, let's get to it. Because that's when the good stuff happens, We go back to the women's headquarters, and again, Arena. She is somebody that, like I said, I just don't like her behavior at all. She's being very inappropriate. Amber's getting, like, flowers from Paul, and she at this point, she doesn't know that Paul has, like, gotten these flowers. Like she doesn't know that Paul gave Amber these flowers at this point. She just thinks they're from some guy, and she's like, oh my God, whoever gives you those flowers, like, you should marry that guy, ha ha. And then, like, a couple seconds later, she finds out it's Paul, and then she's just like, starts making fun of her and laughing behind her, and it's just not nice. It's just not appropriate behavior, and I'm just not about it. Like, no. But we move on now to Paul and Micah, and I have to say there's big pickles here, big pickles, because you have Micah, who is really into Kwame. At least at this point, you're like, yeah, she just told this guy she's 100% into him, and Paul is like, I'm really into Amber, and I'm also really into you. But then this is when I get confused, because then literally in this conversation, she tells Paul that she's 100% about him. I'm like, no, ma'am, rewind the tapes. Rewind the tapes. Because you said that to Kwame, like, not even like 20 minutes ago. So don't lie to me. Ma'am. This is when my wheels started to turn, and I was like, I don't know if I like you very much, girl. I don't know. And then, to make things worse, at the end of this conversation, they agree that they're only going to see each other and that they're going to break up their relationships with the other people they have. I was like, what? No, ma'am. It was a turn of events for me. I did not see that coming. Did not. I was actually pretty shocked. But, to me, like I was saying, like Micah to me is like a really interesting character. She tells Paul... she tells Paul that she's really into him and all this stuff, and then she's also like, okay, now that we're, official, I guess, you have to go and tell Amber and, like, break up with her. And I was like, oh my God, like obviously, and you can just see at this point that Paul's like, damn, like, I don't know what to do. Is this the right call? Like, you can see, like, a bit of doubt and also a bit of sadness as well, that he's gonna have to, like, break this girl's heart, basically. I don't know. He gave me weird vibes at this point. I wasn't sure if he was actually gonna break up with her, but we'll get on that. Okay, and then the end of this episode. The end of this episode was the best, I will say. It was the best. You wanna know why? So Brett is basically talking to Tiffany, and he is expressing his feelings. He's like, oh my God, girl, like, you're my perfect match. Perfect match. If you haven't watched my reviews and recaps to the perfect match, I'll put that up there. You can go watch it, because that was a fun show. Just saying. That was fun. But he basically says, you're like my perfect match, and you're the one for me. And then he's just like, hello? And it's just silence. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, why isn't she talking back? And then they show her in the room, and she fell asleep. She fell asleep. I said, this can't be real. What do you mean she fell asleep? She fell asleep. I was cracking up. I was laughing. I shouldn't have been laughing, but I was laughing so hard because I was just so confused as to how she fell asleep. Like, was he talking for a very long, like, oh my God, I couldn't take it. I was shocked. But he, at this point, is confused because he doesn't know what's going on. And he's just like, hello? Like, literally has no idea what's going on. And then he leaves. He goes back to the men's headquarters, and he tells Marshall that he is over it, that he's done, and that he's not dealing with this. And then just end of episode. I was laughing so hard. I couldn't believe she fell asleep. She fell asleep. I said Netflix. Producers, come on. Y'all, come on. I was dying. It was so funny. Oh, God. Ends like that. So we're starting episode 2 recap now. Okay, guys. So the episode 2 recap, you start off, how did she fall asleep? I don't understand. The girls come into the room to to wake her up. And she's like, oh, what's going on? And I'm like, girl, did you not realize? And then she's like, is Brett still there? I'm like, girl, you've probably been sleeping for 30 minutes. Brett is not there. And then, like, when the girls are like, no, he's gone, she's like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Like, how did you even fall asleep? Like, so then we go into Jacquelina. Now, we briefly met Jacquelina in the first episode, but I didn't, like, she wasn't really focused a lot. Like, she just kind of talked a little bit, so I didn't really talk about her then. But she actually does end up becoming a big focal point going forward. But she, at this point, is really into Marshall, who we know now, and Josh. And Josh hardly has any screen time, so the name's not even that important. But she has a very, very big personality, and Marshall's more a little bit on the calmer, quiet side. But somehow, they really mix. But I'm glad we finally get to meet Marshall, like get to actually see him. He's talking to Jacquelina, and, they talk about their really rough upbringings together. Marshall had a dad who wasn't a very nurturing person at all, and Jacquelina was someone who was raised by really, really strict parents, and she doesn't really tell her parents a lot of things because she really came up with a family like that, and she doesn't want to raise her kids in that same way. So they both kind of like, they really see eye to eye on that. And they decide to be each other's, like, number one. You're like, yes, you're my number one, and you're my number one. Like, they're, like, pretty locked in, as they like to say. So eventually, Tiffany, she's being interviewed, and she's like, I just fell asleep. I was really tired. Like, and his voice is so soothing, and it had been a long day, et cetera, et cetera. I guess I can understand that. I mean, these people are probably filming, like, crazy hours, and your sleep is probably all, like, messed up. So, like, I get it. But, she goes in to talk to him, and she feels so shitty about falling asleep on him. And at this, she talks to him, and she's like, I'm sorry, like, this happened. I fell asleep. I was really tired. And, he's still kind of, like, upset about it. And at this point, you think, like, he's just going to dump her. Or he's just going to be like, how could you do that to me? Like, I'm really, really upset. But instead, he does not. He proposes to her. Yes. He proposes to her. Like I had called in the first episode, they are the first ones to get engaged. And I could not be happier about this pairing. I really like this pairing. And she, of course, is very confident in her yes. And they're all happy and they leave the rooms. So we'll get into them meeting soon. But we move on to Micah and Kwame. They're sitting down to chat. And before he goes into the room, he's like, I'm all about her. She's my number one. I want to be with her, etc. And it's really awkward. They walk in, and the first thing she says is she wants to explore other relationships. And I was like, right, I forgot. In episode 1, she and Paul had decided that they were going to, like, break up with their other people. I was like, fudge. Because in the trailer, it looked like they were together. So the people who did the trailer this season, like, really stumped me. Because, like I said, the people who I thought were together are not together. But, yeah, after she tells him that, he pretty much just pauses. And I didn't know how he was going to take it, but he pretty much goes the route of the, like, it doesn't bother me route, where he's pretty much just kind of like, okay, cool. Thank you for listening. I agree with that, and I wish you the best. And he just tells her, like, all these, like, things, like, oh, it was nice meeting you in here. I wish you the best, all this stuff. But you can clearly tell that he is very hurt by what she has said, because literally a couple seconds before he went to the room, he was like, I'm all in. Like, she's the one. And then he, like, obviously he just didn't want to kind of show that off, but yeah, he was definitely hurt. But yeah, she was like, okay, great. And then she walks out, and it's just so awkward. I actually felt really bad for him at this time. And I actually really do like Kwame in general. I like him more than I like Micah. So whatever with that one. But We move on now to Paul and Amber because he has to break up with Amber next. So, after going in circles a couple of times, and like Amber's like, "Are you breaking up with me?" And he's just like, "Yeah." I was like, I for a second thought maybe, just maybe, he might not, but no. He broke up with her and tells her that he is gonna be going with someone else in their connection, and she takes it very differently than Kwame does. She's very upset, and just like a very different reaction. Like I said, she's like, I don't like to talk in soft platitudes. Like, I'm not gonna tell you I wish you the best, like, because that's not how I feel right now. I'm like, you're valid to feel that way, girl. You valid. And he was like, hey, like, if nothing that I said to you was a lie. And she says, fuck you, Paul. And walks out. And I was like, oh, it really sucks. Like, I feel always both sides in the situation, because it's not that somebody, I mean, there are people that do want to hurt you, but like there are situations really where it's not necessarily like that a guy wants to hurt your feelings, that they want to say that to you. It's just like they're being honest, and obviously what they're saying is going to hurt you even though they don't want to do it, but it's gonna hurt you no matter what. So like, I get it. I felt bad. I felt bad for Paul, but obviously I also felt bad for Amber because she has put all of her eggs in this one basket, and now it's just blown up in her face. And then this is when, again, I just go back to Irina and Micah just being, like, really immature and laughing at people that it's just, like, not necessary. Especially Irina. She really gives me really immature vibes, and I don't like it. Amber's in there talking to Chelsea, like literally crying around the corner, and Irina and obviously Micah want to know what happened. So Irina's like sneaking around like behind a freaking shelf, like trying to listen, and then she's like and she's like laughing, and I'm like, guys, this is so inappropriate. Like, someone is clearly really hurt right now. You can tell they're going through something. You can tell that obviously it didn't work out. Like, why are you gonna be freaking nosy like that and then start laughing and being like, oh, I can't do this? Like, it's just immature, and I'm not here for it. Not here for it. Then we move on to our first reveal, which is super duper excited. We have Tiffany and Brett. They meet for the first time, and yes, dress, she looks good. He looks fine. He's got this turtleneck on. I said, yes, boy, yes. I live for the turtleneck. But guys, usually these, it can be really awkward. And boy, do we get awkward at some point. But we'll get there. But not this one. No, it wasn't awkward at all. Like, they look good together. I see good potential. They were very, like, kissy. They were very comfortable. It just felt natural. It didn't look like they needed, like, an extra day or two to, like, adjust. Like, oh, this is the voice. This is the face. It was kind of like the initial was like, boom, boom. I get you. You who are picked. I'm attracted to you. Let's get going. And I liked them. Like I said, they give me really good vibes, and I see good potential for them. So then we go on to Marshall and Jacqueline, and they're in the room, and she pretty much, he's like telling her, like, you're the one. I don't want to be with anyone else. And then she gets like really, really emotional, and I'm like, okay, where is this going? And she pretty much tells him that this other guy who she's into told her, like, if it's not you, I'm packing my bags. And she just couldn't break up with him because she felt really bad. And Marshall gets really upset at this, and he's not mad at her. He's actually really caring and really nice. He's like, I understand that you're emotional, like, take your time, like, whatever it is that you need. He's just mad that somebody in the house was like putting this like pressure on her to be like, if basically if you don't pick me, like, I'm leaving, and it just like, he just was not about that behavior. But she just felt super, super duper bad. And yeah, that's when you're finding out, so Marshall goes back to the room, and Josh is there, and, he just pretty much is like, 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 it's a competition, and I'm in competition with Marshall. I'm like, this isn't a competition. This is your heart. Okay, enough with the I hate when people, this isn't a competition. I hate when people talk about that when it's like a show about love. Like, you're not winning money. This isn't a competition. But we go back to Micah and Irina, and again, done with them. They're being super mature women. They're laughing at the fact that Jacqueline, what's her name? Not Jacqueline. Jacquelina is crying and saying that it's crazy, like underneath their breath, or like talking like about people behind their backs. It's just immature. So then we move back to Chelsea and Kwame, because remember, so at this point, time has passed on and we can tell, like, Kwame, I mean, time, could be a day, could be 3 hours, I don't know. But Kwame was very, very upset when Michael broke up with him. Like, he was crying, he was in the pits. He was very, very upset about this. And he decides he's just going to continue talking to Chelsea to see if there is a connection there, because he did have a very strong connection with her and he does really like her. And at this point, I didn't know how I felt about them. I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if this is being like, is he forcing it? Like, I don't know, because he doesn't have the person he originally wanted. I don't know. But the one thing that I can still tell at this point is that she is much more into him than he is into her. Like, that is completely obvious. So I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about it. Then we have Paul and Micah, and I was like, okay, so is this the engagement episode? We're in episode 2. Usually by episode 4, we're in freaking Mexico or wherever we're going. So I'm like, okay, we've got to be getting to these engagements fast. So I'm like, okay, are they getting engaged? Is he going to propose? Is he going to propose? And he does. And guys, I'm not going to lie. For a second, I was like, fuck, is she gonna say no? Is she gonna, like, rethink it and try to go back to Kwame? Like, what's happening? Because she just starts off by being like, I was like, girl, how do you start off with that? But in the end, she does say yes, and I was like, all right. Like, I like Paul, I do, but I just do not like her. I'm not a fan of Micah, like, not even a little bit. Not gonna lie, not even a little bit. So then we move on to poor Kwame, who has to deal with Paul coming back into the room and everyone congratulating him on his engagement, who he knows is to Micah, the girl that he wanted to early propose to. And it's so funny the way they edit this, because they have, like, him literally just, like, in the back room with, like, champagne, like, drinking it in sadness, or they'll have all the guys, like, congratulate him, like, patting him in the back, and then you just have Kwame, like, just, like, kind of like sulking in the background. Like, the way it was produced, chef's kiss. Production, points for you for that one. Editing, lovely. You guys killed it. But then we have Bliss and Arena, and they're, like, kind of, like, bickering because they kind of like the same guy. Basically, it was Zach's birthday. Bliss is making him, like, cupcakes, and then she comes in and she's like, hey, do you mind if I, like, use one of your candles? And she's like, this is kind of awkward, like, it's for the same guy. And like, Bliss is just, like, doesn't really want to get involved. Like, she's like, this is kind of weird that we're, like, discussing this, and I just don't feel like it's appropriate. And Bliss just goes on, like, to talk to, like, other people, and she's like, like, I just don't trust her, and I don't really like, like, I just don't trust her. And to be honest, I don't like her either. So, Bliss, I'm with you. But we move on. We see Zach and Arena talking. And guys, I don't like this pairing. And with where we go in episode 3, I really don't like this pairing. I don't understand it. I don't see the chemistry. I don't like it. I don't. I'm not a fan. And then we have Bliss and Zach, which is the other couple. And I'm not going to say it. I feel like I'm not invested. And I don't know if it's just because, like, Zach isn't, like, I think he might be, like, just a bit socially awkward. And I don't know, like, anytime he's in conversations with people, I'm never kind of like, oh. Like, he does get very vulnerable and stuff. But I don't know. To be honest, I don't know how I feel about him. I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. But basically, he's just feeling very, very overwhelmed with the whole, like, having to pick a girl, basically. And then he also has kind of, like, this, like, thing on his back where he has to deal with the fact that the two girls that he does like don't like each other, and they're kind of bad-mouthing each other in the room, but not really. They're not, like, being like, oh, she's a bitch. Like, they're not doing that, but they're just, like, he can clearly tell that they don't like each other, But the episode ends with a Paul and Micah reveal. But of course, what do? They gave us a cliffhanger, and I was freaking pissed. And they do it in episode 3 too. But guys, let's get into the episode 3 recap. Yep, we're there. We're at episode 3 now. And guys, I thought this was funny because the title of this episode is Love Really Blind? I don't know. For certain couples, I don't think so. But we start off with the actual reveal between Paul and Micah, and it's a little awkward, but it's not too bad. Like, they're not too, like, kissy kissy like Tiffany and Brett were. Like, I don't know, like, they're just not very, like, they didn't just go straight for that. It was kind of a little bit kind of like, just like that awkward kind of hug. Like, you just hug for a really long time, and then you kind of separate, and you don't know. You're like, are we kissing? Are we not kissing? Like, you just don't know. So it just gets a little bit awkward, but overall, the interaction wasn't too bad. I've seen worse. Get back to Jacquelina and Marshall, and yay, they get engaged. He says he's in love with her. Excitement's in the air. They're both very excited, and at this point, I really like this couple together. I think they're fun. They look good together. Like, I like them. Then we move back to Kwame and Chelsea, who are connecting again. There are lots of connection. He brings out the guitar. They sing a song together. It's super cute. A lot of singing on this episode. A lot of guys singing. I don't know why, but yes. And the one thing I notice about Chelsea a lot is that she is definitely someone who is very desperate for love, and I don't want to say that in a bad way, like she's desperate. It's just like she just really wants to find her person, and you can really see that she's trying, that she really genuinely likes this person, and I like her. She hasn't to me, she hasn't given me any bad vibes. Like, she's just somebody who wants to find love, and that's always nice. Everyone wants to find that, right? So then we have Zach and Irina, and they go on to share about a story. Zach goes on to share a story about her, about this stuffed animal they left in the room for her, and I appreciate his vulnerability. I think Zach has been very vulnerable throughout this whole process, experiment, quote unquote. And then he goes on to talk about how he thinks that Irina is vicious. And I was like, sir. And she's like, well, what do you mean? Like, I don't like that you're calling me vicious. And I was like, oh, that's maybe not the right word. But he's like, no, I don't mean vicious like in a bad way. I mean vicious as in, like, if someone were to hurt like your best friend or hurt someone in your family or something, like, you would not hesitate to hurt them back. And I was like, I guess so. I just don't think Irina is the one for him. I don't. I really don't. But you see Zach talking to Marshall, and he talks about how he just really trusts Serena more than he does Bliss, but he also has a very deep connection with Bliss, and he loves her mind and where that can go. She's very smart. These are things that he really likes, but he just feels like he trusts Irina more. Why? I don't know. I don't know what we're not seeing. But Bliss and Zach end up talking again, and he's worried that her family won't accept him, because he says the L bomb to her, and I was like, okay, all right, we're doing the L bomb. So now, is this who you're choosing? He's just talking about, like, he's just scared that her family won't accept him because she goes on to say that her dad has never accepted any of her boyfriends because he thought that they were never good enough for her. Typical dad stuff. So that would be interesting if they met. But then they end up having, like, a little bit minor, like, thought differences of when they start talking about Irina and what they each think about them, because Bliss clearly doesn't really like her, but Zach likes her. So it's kind of like, well, if you like her, like, it's, I don't know, they just have thought differences, obviously. I agree with Bliss. I don't think she's the prime of the crop, but we don't see everything. We see what we get, right? Okay, so then we have another meeting in person, and it is Jacquelina and Marshall, and I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. And the doors open, and I, for a second, was like, oh my god, is she taller than him? Is she taller than him? And guys, she had heels on. She probably had, like, these, like, maybe, like, 3-inch heels, and she was, like, the same height as him. I was like, oh, that was close. That was close. And it's interesting because Marshall, to me, felt like a taller guy, but she's just obviously very tall. But yeah, she's almost taller than him, but she's not. Not that that's bad. Not that that's bad. I mean, we've seen it a lot. Nicole Kidman, Zendaya, Sophie Turner with Joe Jonas. We've got those couples. It's okay. It's fine. That's not an issue. It's just, I wasn't sure. I was like, oh my god. And also, like, who knows? Like, maybe she doesn't like shorter guys. Like, there's so many things you don't know, right? But they are very kissy. They like each other. There's a vibe. It wasn't awkward. I was like, okay. They hugged for, like, ever, though. I was like, and I think it's because people hug forever because, one, they haven't had that physical contact with the person, and two, they hug first because they don't know like about the kissing part. It's kind of like, this is your fiance. Like, do you kiss them when you see them? Like, you've never kissed them before. You've never held them. You don't know anything about their physical stature. So I think that's why people always like hug. When they hug for a really long time because they kind of are like, they don't want to feel awkward about it, you know? But he's really funny. I really like Marshall. He cracked me up, I will say. He was a very, very funny guy. Very, very funny. Then we go back to, and we're getting to the end of this episode, Bliss and Arena. Bliss brings Arena to the side, and they decide to talk it out, which I thought was so mature of Bliss. Like I said, I really like her. But she brings them aside. She's like, listen, this shouldn't be about us. Like right now, like we are both fighting, or we're not fighting. We are both like the same guy, and he is having trouble choosing because he feels that we are having an issue with each other. So let's just squash it. Let's just start from the beginning, and let's just let him make a choice without having that to think about. And I was like, Bliss, you are mature. I like you. I hope he picks you. Unfortunately, he does not pick her. Zach and Bliss go and talk, and he breaks up with her, and it's so sad. I was actually pretty sad. I really wanted him to pick Bliss because I just don't see him and Irina working out. And I really wanted him to pick her. I thought they might be better together. I don't know. But she wishes him the best, and she tells him that she loves him, and she walks out. And I was like, wow, that was sad. Like, there was like no ill towards him at all. And she literally leaves by just being like, I love you, right? And then just walks out. I was like, oh my God. To leave that man with that, Jesus Christ. Ugh. But he's really emotional about it. He's like really, really emotional about it. And he's just like, oh, I'm not emotional because I think I made the right choice. I'm just emotional because it was a connection that I made. But I chose Arena because I trust her. I trust her more. And I was like, why though? Why? Anyway, that breakup actually really hurt me. But then we move on to Kwame and Chelsea. And yes, there is an engagement. And I don't know how I feel about this one. Like, at this point, I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel. I'm not sure. I don't know. But Chelsea is very convinced. She's like, he's the one. I still, at this point, don't know. At this point, I'm not sure if he necessarily really, really feels for Chelsea what he felt for Micah. But I liked Kwame. Like, he's not giving me ill vibes or like douchey vibes or anything. So at this point, I'm gonna trust this engagement. I'm gonna trust this proposal. I'm just saying. So then we move on to Zach and Arena. And again, like I said, I'm not sure this is the right choice. And then Zach decides to sing this song that just goes on for too long. And I'm like, Zach, buddy, please stop singing. I don't even remember what song he was singing, but I just wanted it to be over. I think I was hiding because I was just like, okay, the song needs to be over. It needs to die like now. But he proposes and she says yes. But we have Kwame and Chelsea, and they finally have their reveal. And guys, it was a very sexual meeting, I will say. Oh my God, I was not expecting that. Chelsea's a very handsy sexual person. Like, she was like whispering things in his ear. I was like, okay, are they about to go and do it right now in the back? Because holy moly, very sexual meeting. I was not expecting it. But they seem happy with each other. They seem to be happy with what they see and what they got, which is always good because sometimes on these shows you can tell right away when someone is not into that person, like right away. And then the episode decides to freaking end on a cliffhanger with Zach and Irina meeting. And guys, I freaking hate when they do these cliffhanger things. It really just, I mean, it's on purpose so that way you can just binge the next episode or binge the show. It's like what they want to do. But I was just like, oh God, again, guys. What did you think so far of Love is Blind episodes 1 through 3? These 3 episodes are always kind of like a little bit of kind of like, all right, let's get to it until we get to Mexico. I know the next episodes I'll be recapping are episodes 4 and 5, so look out for that episode, guys. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe so you'll know when I post that. I should be posting it shortly. But episodes 1 through 3, I like the set of guys that we have. That's my initial thoughts. I couples that are set up, except for one, I'm kind of like, meh, or maybe two, meh, that I'm not really sure about. But other than that, I think it's a strong start. I think it's going to be a good season. I'm still wondering who's the person who's going to be re-proposing. That to me is still boop in the air. I really, really want to know who's re-proposing. So let's get to that, shall we? But anyway, guys, if you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps me out, helps out the channel so that I can spread out to other people so that they can join my Watchaholic family. Thank you so much for being here. If you are a returning subscriber, hello, it's so nice to see you. Thanks for coming around again, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!